Nancy adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder as she walked through the airport corridors. A subtle smile danced on her lips as she imagined Stephen's expression when he saw her arriving home a day earlier than planned. After an entire week at her sister's house, the longing had become unbearable, not just for home but for the small details that built her life with him. There were just a few days left until they would celebrate 25 years together. A quarter of a century sharing a calm routine built with mutual affection and dedication. Without children, they had developed their own dynamic, where companionship filled the spaces of the house. Nancy loved how Stephen made coffee every morning, even though he personally preferred tea. It was one of the many small gestures that made her feel loved. The airport was moderately busy for that Wednesday night. The 5 o'clock flight had landed around 7, and Nancy felt slightly tired but excited at the prospect of surprising her husband. Her footsteps echoed on the polished floor as she passed through the arrivals area, wondering if he was watching that documentary on architecture that fascinated him so much. It was when her heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, there he was. Stephen, tall, with his grey hair at the temples, wearing that navy blue sweater she had given him on their last wedding anniversary. For a moment, Nancy was paralyzed. How did he know she would return today? Could it be a coincidence? Maybe he had called her sister? Her initial impulse was to call out to him, wave, run towards him. But something stopped her. A detail that didn't fit the scene. Stephen was not alone. Beside him, a woman of about 30 years old was talking to him. She was beautiful, with dark hair and an elegant posture. She dressed with discreet refinement, a well-tailored blazer over a light blouse, dress pants, and leaned slightly towards him as they spoke in a low voice. Nancy slowed her pace, observing the scene from a safe distance. There was an undeniable intimacy between them, a familiarity that made her stomach tighten. And then, the gesture. Stephen reached out his hand to the woman. She accepted it. Their hands remained entwined for seconds that seemed to expand in time like a drop of ink in clear water. It was not a casual greeting. It was a touch laden with meaning, the kind of physical connection that communicates far more than words. Nancy felt the blood drain from her face. The smile she wore disappeared as if it had never existed. Her hands began to sweat, and a cold sensation spread across her chest, all the way up to her throat. 25 years. 25 years, and never at any moment had she felt the need to question Stephen's loyalty. There had never been any reason. And now, in a matter of seconds, the entire foundation of trust that supported their marriage seemed to be crumbling. Nancy stepped back a few paces, partially hiding behind a column. They hadn't seen her. Stephen and the stranger were now walking toward the exit, still close, still conversing with that unsettling intimacy. Unable to think clearly, Nancy took out her phone and opened a ride-sharing app. To the nearest hotel, please. She couldn't go back home that night. She couldn't face the walls that had witnessed so many years of history, while her mind swirled with doubts. In the car, she kept her gaze fixed on the window, not really seeing the city passing by around her. The driver attempted to start a casual conversation, but soon realized that his passenger needed silence. The hotel room was impersonal and cold. Nancy sat on the edge of the bed, with her suitcase still closed next to the door. She looked at her own hands, the same hands that had so often held Stephen's with absolute confidence. I knew this would happen one day, she murmured to herself, giving voice to the insecurity she had always carried silently. Over the years, the impossibility of having children had carved a painful space between them. Not for lack of attempts or conversations about adoption that never materialized. It was deeper. Nancy had always secretly feared that one day Stephen would realize he could have had another life, with another woman, perhaps one who could give him children. She lay down, still dressed, hugging the pillow as the tears came in silent waves. Sleep only came in the early hours of the morning, filled with confused dreams where she chased Stephen through endless airport corridors that never ended. When she woke up, her phone showed 5 missed calls and several messages, all from Stephen. Where are you? Your sister said you took a flight yesterday. Please call me. I'm worried. Nancy looked at the words on the screen with an emptiness in her chest. She didn't respond. She spent the day walking through the shopping centre near the hotel, entering stores without really seeing what they sold, sitting in a cafe where she barely touched her drink. Her mind oscillated between confronting Stephen or simply disappearing for a while longer. She needed space to organise her thoughts, to understand what that scene at the airport really meant. It was only on the second day, after another sleepless night and dozens of ignored calls, that Nancy decided to return home. Regardless of what had happened, running away wouldn't solve anything. 25 years couldn't end with a disappearance. The house was silent when she entered. An almost tangible quietness seemed to embrace her with a melancholic strangeness. She left her bag in the hallway and went to the kitchen, where she found Stephen. He was sitting at the table, head down, hands clasped as if in prayer. When he saw her, he jumped up, his red eyes betraying sleepless nights. "Nancy!" His voice came out hoarse, broken. "Where have you been? Why didn't you call me? Your sister said you came back the day before yesterday. Do you have any idea how much I've been looking for you?" She remained in the kitchen doorway, keeping the distance that now seemed necessary between them. "I saw you at the airport," she finally said, the words coming out strangled. "Holding hands with a woman? Aren't you going to tell me?" Stephen's face visibly paled. The sudden understanding seemed to hit him like a physical blow. His shoulders dropped and he stepped back, leaning against the table. "Her name is Julia," he finally said, his voice almost a whisper. Nancy remained still. The name meant nothing to her, but the tone with which he pronounced it said everything. There was an intimacy there, a knowledge she did not share. "She's 30 years old," Stephen continued, keeping his gaze down. "I didn't know she existed. She reached out to me 6 months ago, said she was my daughter. I took a DNA test, it's true." The world seemed to stop around Nancy. Words echoed in her mind, reorganizing the entire reality she knew. Her throat tightened, and for a moment she thought she wouldn't be able to breathe. A daughter. Stephen had a daughter. But how? She finally managed to articulate. "It was before us," he explained, his voice laden with guilt. "I was young. It was something fleeting. Her mother never told me. She wanted to raise her alone because we were no longer together, and when she died, she left a letter for Julia saying who I was. She found me. And I didn't know how to tell you." Nancy turned her face away, trying to process the information. 25 years believing they couldn't have children, that this possibility didn't exist for them. And now, to discover that Stephen could, that the problem had always been, "So it was always me?" The words escaped before she could contain them, laden with all the pain accumulated over the years. "Did you know that? You stayed with me out of pity." Stephen approached cautiously, his face marked by genuine pain. "I stayed with you out of love," he said firmly. "I chose you, Nancy. Even without children, even with the pain, with the silence, with the empty space in the room next door. It was you. It always was. I was scared, yes, but not because I am ashamed of her. Because I knew it would hurt you. Because I love you. And lying by omission was the worst choice I made." Nancy felt the tears escape, one after another, silently streaming down the face that had learned to be strong so many times. "You should have trusted me," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I know." The silence that followed seemed to hold all the weight of the years they had shared, the joys and pains, the secrets kept, and now revealed. "And now?" she finally asked when she found the strength to speak. Stephen took a deep breath, and Nancy recognized in him the man who always faced problems head-on, even when they were difficult. "Now I'm here. If you want me to go, I will, but I hope we can talk, rebuild, fight, love. It's not just peace, it's also a battle, A choice, a decision, and I keep choosing you." Nancy didn't respond immediately. She didn't even know if she had a response, but she also didn't ask him to leave. At that moment, all she could do was feel. The pain of omission, the shock of discovery, the confusion of emotions battling within her. In the days that followed, the house was filled with difficult conversations. Stephen told everything about how Julia had found him, how he was shocked to discover he had a daughter, and how he secretly did the DNA test, fearing to raise hopes or cause unnecessary pain. "I wanted to protect you," he repeated. "I knew how much we suffered from not being able to have children. How could I come home and say that I discovered I have a 30-year-old daughter?" Nancy spent hours alone reflecting on the meaning of it all. It wasn't just about Julia's existence, but about the broken trust. About how sometimes what hurts the most is not the truth itself, but the time it was kept hidden. And above all, she thought about love. The kind that is not perfect, that is made of stumbles, but also of permanence. The kind that chooses to stay even when leaving would be easier. It was on an autumn morning, almost 3 weeks after the discovery at the airport, that Nancy made her decision. She found Stephen in the backyard garden, where he was tending the roses she so admired. "I want to meet her," she said simply. Stephen looked up, surprised. "Are you sure?" Nancy nodded. "She is part of you, and you are part of me. For all these years I thought we would never have children, and now there is this person in the world who carries your blood. I cannot ignore that. I don't want to." The meeting was scheduled for a Sunday, in a quiet cafe in the city centre. Nancy arrived with Stephen, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. She recognised Julia immediately, the same eyes as Stephen's, the same gesture of running her hand through her hair when nervous. The conversation began hesitantly, full of pauses and timid smiles. Julia talked about her life, about the mother who had passed away 2 years earlier, about how long it took to gather the courage to seek out her biological father. "I always knew there was someone," she said. "My mother never hid the fact that my father wasn't present because she chose it that way. She never spoke ill of you," she added, looking at Stephen. "She just said you were both very young and she preferred to go on her own." Nancy watched the interaction between father and daughter with a mix of emotions that she couldn't entirely name. There was pain there, yes. The pain of lost possibilities, of years that would not return. But there was also something new being born, an expansion of what she considered family. "My mother taught me that family is who we choose," said Julia at a certain moment, looking directly at Nancy, "and who also chooses us." When they returned home that night, Nancy felt something different in the air, a lightness she didn't expect to find so soon. As they prepared dinner together, as they had done for so many years, Stephen watched her with a look that combined gratitude and admiration. "Why did you decide to meet her?" he finally asked. Nancy thought for a moment, stirring the sauce she was preparing. "Because true love is not perfect," he replied. "It is full of scars and patches. It is imperfect like us. And yet, it is what keeps us together when everything seems impossible." Stephen approached, wrapping her in a cautious embrace, as if fearing she might pull away. Nancy allowed herself to be held, resting her head on his chest, listening to the beats of that heart which, despite everything, she still knew so well. In the months that followed, Julia became a constant presence in their lives, not to fill the void of the children they never had, but as a new colour on the canvas of a picture already rich in detail. They learned to build a relationship of their own, based not on the past they didn't share but on the present they chose to create together. And Nancy discovered that love, when it is true, has an extraordinary capacity to expand, to find new paths even after storms. Not because it's easy, but because it's a conscious choice, especially in the face of the pains, imperfections, and secrets that life inevitably brings. It was a choice she made every morning, waking up beside Stephen. A choice reflected in the coffee he continued to make, even though he preferred tea. A choice that now included a new name, a new face, a new story intertwined with theirs. A choice called a new beginning. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.